I admit I was in and out taking a look at it. I'll admit that. Hey, Gwen, thanks very much for joining us. Appreciate it quite a bit. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Okay.
All right, that was Gwen Eiffel up there talking to us about the Congress. And in a moment, we are going to be talking with Arianna Huffington and Peter Feld about all these issues and more. You all stay with us. Now, on Watch It, syndicated columnist Arianna Huffington, and in New York, Democratic strategist Peter Feld. Thank you both for being with us. Arianna, we keep hearing nobody cares about this story. America does not give a hoot. Why do Republicans keep talking and bringing it up? Monica goes on for 2 hours, and the entire country, second greatest viewing except for Super Bowl, is watching it. What is the story here? What is this fascination, and yet the statements that nobody really cares?
Yes, it's very confusing to me. I have to admit, Bay, that I watched it in its entirety. I was actually in Columbus, Ohio, giving a speech on the media and ethics, and the students stayed behind at the university, and we all watched it together, and it was fascinating watching it with Monica's contemporaries, and in fact a little younger, because they laughed through the whole thing. In fact, one of them said, there should have been a laugh track. I mean, whenever she was talking about the sensuality of it all and the sexual soulmate and the intensity of it all, they were guffawing. You know, they could not take it seriously. So I found it very enlightening in watching it with young people. Why people are not admitting that they watched it, which they clearly did, if these numbers mean anything, although maybe the numbers are wrong, is probably because they're a little embarrassed. I mean, the whole thing was kind of embarrassing to have Barbara Wallace, who I think did a very good job, given the circumstances, asking her what is phone sex, and did the president complete the action? Where are we on the Jerry Springer show?
I know, I would not have wanted to be in that position, I can assure you. Peter, it appears that Monica, and again, Arianna makes the point. Yesterday when I saw one of the interviews, they went to bookstores, one of the reporters, and asked, are you going to buy it? Are you going to buy it? Everybody she talked to said, no, I'm not going to buy that ridiculous book. And yet it's #1 on the Amazon list. What, are people going to buy it in secret and have brown bags and, carry it around? What is the story here, Peter?
Well, I think it doesn't take a tremendous number of people to drive a book up to the #1 book on Amazon. A lot of people could not be buying it, but they get the story in other ways. I mean, whether they buy it in secret or in public, this is a woman, very unlikely, who had a profound impact on our political system and I think in some ways a very beneficial benefit on our political system. And people are going to be looking back in 100 years, analyzing the intersection of popular culture and politics, and it's all going to focus in on her. So I think what her motivation and experience was is fascinating, and I think people should read her story and they should hear what she has to say.
You know, Peter, I can't let you get away with that statement. It was beneficial for our political system. Monica Lewinsky, please.
Well, think about it. Think about it. Armed only with thong underwear, she brought down Newt Gingrich. He's not there anymore. She brought down Bob Livingston. She did something that Bill Clinton couldn't do in 5 years, which is to put the Democrats in scoring range to take over Congress. And she also exposed a lot of the vacancy of what's been going on in our political system. I mean, of Congress, the Republicans had nothing better to do with their majority in Congress than go on a one-year-long sexual witch hunt that doesn't really speak very much to the so-called revolution that came in 1994. And right now, I think the country is going to swing the other way. And when, if, as I think is likely, the Democrats...
Maybe what you meant to say that she was good for the Democrats, but you actually said that she was beneficial for our political system. I hope you're not confusing the two. But the point is that I think she was good for the president to the extent that all Democrats rallied around him, and there was no dissent within the Democratic Party. You didn't have any criticism from the left. You didn't have anybody rising up, for example, and being outraged over the bombing of a pharmaceutical factory in Sudan. You know, you would have had Jesse Jackson at least complaining. You haven't had even Paul Wellstone complain about the neglect of the inner cities or dysfunctional public schools. So it may have been good for this president, but I think it has been disastrous for our political system. And how can anybody claim otherwise? It's beyond...
You know, it's hard for me to understand, Peter, that you could consider Monica Lewinsky as somebody that's going to be studied in the future. I mean, in 2 hours we learned that there's not a whole lot to study there, I'm afraid. What I don't understand, and see if I can get some ideas from you, Peter, and then Arianna, is the American people watched her, and from all reports, there's very little sympathy for her. They found her a little too giggly, a little too silly and not serious. Amoral was one of the words that was used. Why is it that she seems to, with this whole situation, she gets no sympathy whatsoever, and yet it doesn't seem to backfire on the president?
Well, I think it depends which poll you read, and I think that there's some evidence to the contrary. I think most people didn't like her. She had about a 17-point favorable rating before she went on television. ABC did some polling during and after, and they found that her unfavorable rating went down slightly. Her favorable rating went up from 24% among people who watched before the interview to 35% afterwards, and that came mostly from people who had no opinion about her beforehand. The president's rating, according to that particular poll, among the people who were watching, went from, I think, 58% unfavorable before to 69% unfavorable afterwards. So I think it did have an impact, but there's an interesting gender difference that I would be curious to hear other reactions to, which is I think all along women have been more harsh toward Monica, and I think last year we also saw women being fairly harsh to Kathleen Willey when she first came forward. And I think men have been more harsh toward Bill Clinton. It's an interesting sociological thing, and I think the reason people will be studying her is not only because of her and what she has to say, but how somebody really could have come in from the blue, from kind of off the page, and done what she did really inadvertently and had such a paralyzing and profound effect on our political system. So I don't mean to say that it's her thoughts and feelings that's going to be what people will go back and study.
Arianna, it is a good point that women are seem much tougher on the woman and men on the men.
Well, I can imagine, especially married women. I mean, she's every married woman's nightmare. You know, somebody walks into your husband's office and flashes her found underwear, and the rest is history. So I can understand that. And men, I suppose, in a way, are more understanding, maybe because they're identifying with Bill Clinton. But, you know, I have to also say that we're overanalyzing polls. I think we're attaching far too much significance to these snapshots of reality, which change constantly. And maybe there should be a poll critic in every newspaper that analyzes, you know, how their response rates are going down, whom are they polling. I think they are polling an extremely unrepresentative minority of bored and lonely Americans who don't mind interrupting their dinner to talk about the president's sex life.
Let me get a question into you, Arianna, too. I couldn't agree more on the polls. What is it about Monica? She makes herself a victim. People have treated her so badly, humiliating experience. And yet, yesterday, or 2 nights ago, she exposed an affair with this other fellow over there at the State Department named Thomas, and now all the press knows his last name, and talks about how she aborted his child. I mean, what's the fairness of the way she's just treated that man?
Well, I have to say something, that we need to look at where Monica is with her life. You know, she is on Prozac. She's on antidepressants. This is a very significant fact that has been somehow pushed aside. That means she cannot get through a day on her own. She needs that crutch. I mean, she's a young woman. Why does she need that? So there is a lot that she needs to work out. And instead of us overanalyzing her, maybe somebody else should help her work it out.
A whole school of doctors for this lady, I'm afraid. I want to thank you both for being with us. And up next, Todd Lindbergh for an interesting discussion as well. You all stay with us.